back, folks. Sport Federation TV. We carry on talking about sport in the Western Cape. Nice to have you all along. And, well, as you know, of course, Western Cape Aquatics. Aquatics, in fact, is a globally active sport. But we all think of aquatics as swimming. But, in fact, in the Western Cape and in Cape Town, it's called aquatics. And it's got multiple codes from swimming, diving, water polo, etc. And one of the Western Cape's top coaches joins me now, Vaughn Marlow. Vaughn, great to have you on the line. How are things there with you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, all good considering, I think.
Yeah, of course, difficult times for everybody at the moment. And, well, we can see that we've actually managed to, as you can see, even with these difficult times, we're doing our crossings via the online medium. And there we have you in your car and we're able to talk to you, still find out what you're up to, even via the car. But we believe that you're about to go on a swimming camp at the moment.
Yeah, so we're about to start the regional water polo camp for senior and under 20 men.
Just tell us a little bit about that, Vaughn. How do you get to being on that camp from being a junior or a senior? How do you qualify?
So we've got the camp covers various age groups. We've got the under 15s, under 14, 15, 16s coming up later in December once they've finished exams. And at the moment, we've got the under 20 and senior men's camp, and that obviously falls a part of the trials process to join the Olympic squad. And that camp's taking place towards the middle of December out in Stellenbosch. It is an open camp to anyone who was invited via their clubs and or affiliates.
So let's start at the beginning. If we're looking at participation, you mentioned it now that you go from a club structure to a provincial structure to a national structure. I'm assuming that if you want to be able to go to the Olympics, you have to start at the bottom. How do you start? I mean, where does it all start for the typical athlete? I mean, we know that you are coaching at school level.
Yeah, so I think for your typical athlete, again, schools forms a massive part of the feeder system. And Cape Town's very lucky in that quite a number of their junior schools are playing water polo as school sports, and it's growing every single year. So I think once you sort of get into a junior school and water polo becomes your interest, you can filter in through there. And younger than that, obviously, to be able to swim is only beneficial in a sport that's heavily dependent on swimming.
So we had this conversation the other day that the migration of becoming a water polo player. Do most of the kids simply start swimming? And we also spoke about the Learn to Swim program that we know that you guys have got in place. But do most kids just simply start swimming and then move into water polo, or do they start off with water polo?
I think it's a combination of both. I think we get a lot of guys who cross over from having swum at a younger age. Life-saving and things like that also are good crossover sports for water polo. And then we do obviously get some guys who are able to swim and know how to swim, who want to play water polo, but don't necessarily come from a club swimming background. So it's a little bit of everything.
And then if you start looking at that, I mean, you're a high-performance coach. How do you make the migration? Is it a specific type of training that you need to do? We often hear that tennis and squash don't really mix, and sometimes we hear that swimming and water polo doesn't really mix because the strokes are different.
Yeah, I think to migrate from swimming to water polo is more sort of a personality thing. I think water polo is obviously a big team sport where swimming's a lot more individual. So I think guys, by the time they start getting towards the 13, 14, 15, 16, they kind of realize what type of personality they've got and whether they're a team sports guy or an individual sports guy. I'm of the opinion that swimming doesn't necessarily mess up water polo doesn't mess up your swimming stroke. That's kind of like saying breaststroke messes up your freestyle. It's just another stroke.
Yeah. So how much do the guys train at the moment? And of course, you're also coaching at a national level. How much do you need to train to become a successful water polo player?
Sure. On a national level, you need to be need to be training, I would say, minimum 5 times a week, possibly more than that. The lower you go down, it obviously drops off and varies, and it depends at what level you're wanting to play and train at. There's obviously participation and high performance. So if you're there to participate, a couple of times a week just to throw a ball around, get relatively fit and have fun. But if you're wanting to take it further, you need to put in some harder yards. I think that's with all sports.
And how are we doing from a competitive level? If we look at Cape Town, are we competing?
Yeah, I think we're up there. I think big competition's always going to be at a junior level is from Gauteng and the senior level as well. With KZN also hot on our heels. Those sort of three regions have got pretty well established school and club structures, and that obviously feeds through into the high performance end. But we're definitely up there with those two.
And how are we doing from a South Africa perspective? Yourself now, of course, being involved at a national level. I mean, are we able to compete with the rest of the world?
Yeah, look, we're able to compete, but in terms of the Baltic nations, and Europe, Australia, America, in Europe, water polo is a fully professional sport, and in South Africa, it's still amateur at the moment. So, we're definitely probably one of the best amateur nations in the world, but we've still got some ways to go against the likes of Hungary, Serbia, Italy, Greece, and so on and so forth, just because they're fully professional and we're not.
And Vaughn, what comes next for you guys now? Do you have competitions? That we know that, of course, it's COVID in place and there's a lot of strict regulations and a lot of health and safety protocols that the athletes have to fulfill, and coaches and clubs and so on. But do you guys have any idea where you're going with next competitions into the future?
I think from a national men's and club perspective, through Swimming South Africa, we fortunately have got a COVID policy return to train and play. So the Western Cape senior leagues are up and running. I think this is our third weekend, and the guys are about to start their regional camp, which builds into the national camp to hopefully make an Olympic side next year in Japan. Obviously, there are a lot of variables and unknowns ahead of us, but I think at the moment we're just grateful that we can be back in the water and training.
Yeah. Vaughn, thanks for catching up with us. Just a last question: if folks that are watching right now, if they want to join a water polo club or get started and get in the pool, how do they do that? Is it a question of going to the Western Cape Aquatics website, or do you just knock on a club's door?
Yeah, I think depending on where you are and your age, I think a school system is always a good one to start with as a youngster. But otherwise, if you go onto the Western Cape Aquatics page, Brett Redlingace is our chairman. He's doing a fantastic job. And otherwise, any social media outlets, just look for water polo on there, and you should be able to get in touch with somebody.
Great stuff. Vaughn, we leave it at that. We know that you've got to get back to the pool. You've got some coaching to do, and your camp is about to start soon. So we're looking forward to finding out how the athletes are progressing, and lots of pictures and videos, and we'll catch up with you guys, and stay safe, obviously.
Cool. Thanks a lot for your time. Cheers.
Thanks, Vaughn. We'll hopefully catch up with you again soon. Right, folks, that's a wrap from us here this evening. And we'll, of course, catch up with you again next week. Same time, same place. Have a fantastic sporting weekend. Bye-bye.